I always ask a few questions before I start my presentation. So before you decided to register for this event, however it came into your inbox or what have you, you got an email from someone or something happened. Had you ever heard of RISC-V before thinking about coming to this event? Who this is the first time they've heard of RISC-V and decided to come here? One person in the room, that's great. I've attended every workshop since the first one in January of 2015, and it was the exact opposite when we would host those workshops. So this is pretty cool. The next question is, how many of you have been to the RISC-V.org website? Come on, you haven't? Most of you are lying. Okay. Everyone here, I'm sure, has at least at one point went to the website, if nothing else, to register. Okay, I can stop being funny. Thanks, guys. The next question I usually ask is, how many of you have downloaded the RISC-V spec? Okay, now see all of those people that were lying? Because how could you possibly have downloaded the spec without going to the site? So that's good. How many of you how many of you that downloaded, keep your hands up, those of you that have downloaded, how many of you read the spec? Okay, that's a good add. And now, how many have active RISC-V projects that they're working on personally or in their company? So that's pretty cool. That's cool. So my name is Rick O'Connor. I'm the executive director of the RISC-V Foundation. And it's my pleasure to be here today, and thank you to the Andes team and the team from NTHU for hosting this first workshop in Shanghai. A couple of thank yous. I know CT went through this, so I won't spend a lot of time, but obviously we can't put on these kinds of events without sponsors, so Andes and Western Digital, thank you very much. And to the rest of the sponsors. So thank you very much, and make sure you visit the tables out there and so on. CT and the program committee did a great job. I hope you're going to enjoy the technical talks over the course of the day. So thank you to everyone. CT, you chaired the committee, and Charlie, who was the vice chair. Please mark your calendars for the next two events. The upcoming workshop in the spring is at ETH Zurich. And if you don't know the team at ETH, you've probably played with their pulp cores, or at least looked at the cores. That's the team that generated the pulp and Pulpissimo and Pulpino and all that good stuff. So it's on site on their campus. And then, of course, we'll be back in the Valley over in the San Jose Convention Center for another big summit, which will be twice the size as the one that we had this past December. So we're expecting over 2,000 attendees and probably 60 companies exhibiting in the exhibit forum at the summit. All right, so who cares? What the heck is this RISC-V thing? High quality, license-free, royalty-free instruction set architecture originally developed at UC Berkeley. I think most of you know that. And it's a standard, a series of specifications that are maintained by the RISC-V Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization. Suitable for all types of computing. I get this a lot. Oh, so yeah, okay, we'll use IoT, right? It's IoT. Or no, it's just for embedded, right? Little cores in embedded. That's all you can use it for. No, we have a lofty goal of RISC-V is suitable for all computing platforms and will be in all computing platforms. And we'll all eventually carry devices in our hands with RISC-V processors in them. There's all kinds of proprietary and open source cores out there, right, for you to pick up and evaluate. Lots of good companies selling IP and promoting it, and lots of open source IP that's really starting to get some traction in the marketplace as well. And the foundation is happy for any and all implementations. And it's experiencing very, very rapid uptake in the industry. So another question I get a lot is, hey, RISC-V guy, give me my core. Where do I go to get my core? And the foundation is not the keeper of any designs, right? The foundation is the keeper of the specification stack and only the specification stack and some related technologies in support of the ISA spec. For cores, right, there's a large ecosystem, and there's a page on the site of cores that we know are out there, but the foundation itself does not look after cores. Okay. Lots of software work. Clearly bringing up a processor requires a significant software ecosystem, and there's lots and lots of activity, both closed and open source software development activity in the ecosystem. And over the course of the next 2 days, you'll hear talks on a bunch of both the cores and software development work that's going on, as well as the exhibits over in the reception area. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, though. Really, what's all the fuss about? Come on, it's an ISA, and other than the fact that we like to, have events like this and go rah rah, it's an ISA. It's just an ISA. When's the last time you thought about the ISA that was in any of the devices you were developing? Probably not very, very much. Well, how did we get here? What's all of the excitement about? So this came out of UC Berkeley, I think as most of you know, as a research project that started back in 2010. And the team there, and we'll talk about RISC-V in a moment, but the team there has obviously done a lot of work. It's Dave Patterson, for those of you who know that name, is credited with defining the term RISC back in the 80s around his original RISC research work. And over the years, they've had many, many different projects. And in the spring of 2010, they wanted to refresh their curriculum with some new content, thought about, maybe we could use x86, Spark, MIPS, maybe we could use ARM. If I'm an undergrad in computer science and I've never been introduced to microprocessors before, starting an introductory course with the x86 ISA might be a little overwhelming. So probably a little too complex, certainly some legal issues. Because one of the things that you like to do in a teaching environment is take something apart completely and then put it all back together again and have the access to do that kind of work. So there's sometimes some legal access issues. So x86 challenging, ARM less challenging than that probably, but still challenging nonetheless. So hey, let's crank up this 3-month project. And 4 years later, the 3-month project turned into a series of research papers, test chips, more research papers, and then the release of the first base integer spec. So the 5, right? It's a 5. It's not a V. And hopefully you never ever thought it was a V. It's Roman numeral 5, as in the 5th generation of microprocessor research at UC Berkeley. And this means that you are now all ambassadors of the RISC-V brand. Because as you engage new people who haven't been exposed to RISC-V before, their first inclination, and it's not really so invalid, but their first inclination is to think that it's RISC-V, right? And it's not RISC-V. So you reach out, you tap them on the shoulder, and you say, no, mate, that's a 5. And then they'll be an ambassador of the brand forever going forward. So as they were going through this research and all these publications and so on, there was plenty of feedback that they were getting from industry, the team at Berkeley, that indicated to them that, this is probably going to need to be a project outside of the 4 walls of the university, and a project that is supported independently of the university. So in August of 2015, I worked with Dave and Kirsta and a bunch of other folks, Ted, actually, Ted Spears is here, and we started the RISC-V Foundation as a nonprofit organization to govern the ISA. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. So what's the issue? What are we really dealing with? This NVIDIA Tegra SoC is an example SoC. We're not picking on NVIDIA. It's just a pretty fundamental example of a modern large-scale SoC today, right? Where there are dozens and dozens of different types of cores. Usually we're most familiar with the application processors or maybe the graphics processors, but there's many, many other cores built into an SoC like this. They all have different software stacks. They all have different development tools. They have probably different ISAs for sure in them. Some might be homegrown ISAs and for little tiny cores, but there's dozens and dozens, each with their own stack that needs to be maintained, which isn't the most elegant engineering solution to developing a system like this. Do we need all of these different ISAs? And more importantly, do they have to be proprietary? If you look at any major computing system that we have today, there are open interface standards in pretty much every major interface in that system, except for ISAs. And why is that? They certainly don't need to be proprietary. And what if, oh my goodness, what if we could just have a free and open ISA that could do everything? Hey, we got one. So what's so different about it? It's far smaller, right? So the base integer spec, less than 50 instructions, it's far smaller than any commercial thing that's out there. It's also a clean slate design with a fair amount of attention that was given to separating implementation details, microarchitecture details in the spec. So there are no technology-dependent features built into the way the ISA is written. And this is probably one of the more fundamental things. It's modular. It's not a novel concept per se, but it's a modular ISA. So the ISA is not one great big contiguous list of instructions. It's broken up into a series of standard modules and that are independent of each other, and you only use the module that you need. So if I'm building a deeply embedded tiny core, I may only have I and M, for instance, the integer and the multiply divides. If I'm building something that's higher end, then I'll have many more extensions, atomics, and floating points, and so on. And building on that modularity, it's designed to be extensible, right? So we can add more and more extensions and modules. And in fact, there's also a user-defined module, or user-defined opcode space, that is protected for the user's use. And you can define your own instructions that hard code your own secret sauce algorithm into the processor, and you stitch that in a standard way. This last part's pretty key. Building again on that modularity, it's stable. Once the ecosystem and industry and the foundation release an extension, it's frozen, done, delivered, won't change ever. You produce a device that depends on those instructions and runs those instructions, the binaries that support that extension will always, always, always run on your device. Even if years later from now, we all discover that, you know what, there's a mistake, there's some errata in there that we should have caught at the beginning, we're not going to change that extension. We will add a new extension that adds some different instructions that corrects that problem, meaning that that functionality in the marketplace or in your device will always, 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 always run and never be rendered obsolete. Okay, that's the ISA overview part. I will quickly go through the foundation because I think most of you know this. 2015, we incorporated the nonprofit, worked for quite a while with 47 different companies to draft membership agreement and bylaws, which were ratified in December 2016. And the fundamental purpose of the foundation is to make sure that the ISA remains free and open for everyone forever. Right? That's really why the foundation exists. In support of that, we will have compliance suites, open source compliance suites, so that when I say I've got an IMAFD compliant device, and Frank, you have an IMAFD compliant device, everybody knows what that means. The code will run the same way on mine as it does on Frank's, and everybody will be happy. And then as part of that, the trademark is used to help protect and guarantee that RISC-V can be counted on as a compliant platform. So you're only allowed to use the trademark on a commercial device if you've passed the compliance suites and basically that you're following the rules. And it's a self-policing methodology, at least it is for now. Right? We're not, at this time, we're not considering running a certification lab or a compliance lab or anything. We make the compliance suites available to everyone. They're open source. We let the community decide if I have done my tests properly and if I have proven my results properly when I say I have a compliant device. Okay. We have a board of directors, seven directors on the board, and I'll introduce at least one of them in a moment. And the board basically has the responsibility to make sure that we're living by the rules that we've set for ourselves in the governance framework, bylaws, and so on, and to appoint committees. So we have a technical committee that's a standing committee, and Yunsuk Lee is the chair of the technical committee. We have a security standing committee chaired by Helena Hanchus from Rambus, and we have a marketing committee, and that's Ted Morita from Western Digital. Wave to the crowd, Ted. He's up here in the front. So if you want to get involved with any of the committees, you can contact the foundation to get registered in those, and you can talk to Ted here this week. And in order to participate in a committee, you must be actually a member of the RISC-V Foundation. So the board, there's 2 board members here, actually. We'll start at the bottom. Ted Spears from Microsemi is here, and Rob Oshana from NXP is in the back. So thanks for joining us. Kirsta and Dave are obviously originally from Berkeley. Dave's at Google now. Zvonimir Bandic from Western Digital, Charlie Hawk from BlueSpec, and Franz Sistermans from NVIDIA. And every year, there's at least 2 seats that are up for election at the board level, and then every 3rd year, there's going to be 3 seats. And this is the 3rd year. So Kirsta, Dave, and Zvonimir are, I believe, or is it you, Ted? Can't remember. At least Kirsta and Dave I know are up for election this spring. I want this memorized by lunchtime, and then there'll be a test or you don't get dinner. So going back to the momentum part, this is pretty crazy. We have 235 members in the organization. The growth has been pretty phenomenal. If you look back to Q3 of 2015, the growth has been pretty crazy. And in fact, in the last 12 to 18 months, we've grown over 100% by pretty much every metric you want to count. So it's quite, it's humbling. It's quite humbling, actually, to see how successful and interested the ecosystem is in adopting RISC-V. So it's my last slide. Please, if you're not on the mailing list and you're not following us on Twitter or LinkedIn, make sure you do. All of the information generally with any of the events that are going out are on Informus site and mail lists that they maintain, as well as on sites that the RISC-V Foundation maintains. But I think one thing that is clear is we are absolutely in the midst of a new processor frontier, a new processor innovation frontier that the industry really has not seen for decades. So this is pretty cool stuff. Thanks for your time.